Welcome everyone to the February Psychedelic STL virtual speaker series meeting. Today we have Rudy Maldonado. He is a community and volunteer officer at MAPS, and then also the founder and the artist behind Found and Found Store. And without further ado, Rudy, if you want to give us just a bit of an introduction.
Yeah, thanks. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me to speak with Psychedelic St. Louis. I think that's really cool. I've seen this you all since the inception, and been admiring Alyssa's efforts and all of you coming together to make this happen. I look forward to the growth as well. I'm Rudy. I've been I'm at MAPS. I've been working there. Just had my anniversary of 8 years on staff on February 6th. Um before that I was a volunteer for 3 years. So it's been about an 11-year journey within navigating MAPS and been navigating psychedelics far before that, I think. I'm in Santa Cruz, California, and I grew up near here, about 45 minutes away, and just recognize that there's a lot of me that's always wanted to live in this area. And when I found out that Maps was located here, I just did everything I could possibly do to be a part of it. Um, and yeah, I focus heavily on community organizing, volunteer coordination for our vast pool of people who are very interested in getting involved with Maps. We have over 25,000 people who are registered who are interested in volunteering, and we don't even utilize that like near that many people, but I'm always here trying to figure out ways to expand that and and just be creative in ways that we can do that. And I've got to meet people like Alyssa who've come in to volunteer with me, and it really starts to grow things. And I think with the time spent, you get to see things really start to blossom, ideas start to unfold. Um, and yeah, beyond that, I have my own jewelry company called Found and Found, where I reclaim wood and also use leather to make jewelry. I'm always covered in it, so this is very much what the things I make. Um, and I'm gonna get more into that later on too about what that process is like and how that all ties into what we're doing here.
Awesome. Sorry about that interruption. That was a phone call.
You're
But
fine.
it's really great to hear about all of the different ways that you kind of express yourself, both in a formal, like titled position, like at Maps, and then also a formal titled position, like at Found and Found. But then your way of describing your position with volunteers, it's kind of, you know, getting to see everyone and meet them where they're at. But it's not necessarily that they're coming to you as the CVO of volunteers. They're coming to you as Rudy and what they can do to help you out, both in Maps' capacity, but then also even I know some of our friends have helped out with Found and Found too. And so it's good to see that really titles and that kind of like formality around it isn't really the cornerstone of community building. And it seems like you really hold that to be true. But
Thanks.
I wanted to get into um, what were some pivotal moments that kind of led you here? Because I know that a lot of people might romanticize working at Maps or romanticize being a small business owner. And I think that there are some things that happen along the way that prime you for that. And so I wanted to get into what some of your experiences that shaped your relationship to this work might be.
Pivotal moments really, I think it really thought about this. It's one of those things where, yeah, I think volunteering at Maps was a beginning that got like of something I was pushing for a long time. But before that, when I was navigating really difficult challenges, and it's no secret that in my past I was falsely incarcerated when I was 18. That there were many moments where I was still navigating that time and age, where I was trying to see where I wanted to be and see how I wanted to be in the future, and then also really having to consider what would be like to kind of start over after, say, up to 4 years in prison. Like that was my reality at one point, and being in this really constrained pocket while also taking things like mushrooms that were really helping me to regulate and see things from a different perspective and see myself in a different perspective. It really opened me up to myself and being able to see what my options really are. And I think that, one of the largest pieces of my one of the largest like pivotal moments of my life was kind of coming to terms with, like, what do I need to do to be happy if I were to start over? And mushrooms really helped me cross that bridge. And after after serving my time, I did find maps through a podcast, and it really just sounded like those things I was looking to do, looking to be a part of, something that's bigger than me, something that I can help other people with, and also relating directly with mental health and helping people through PTSD, through really harsh experiences. And I think it checked off everything I wanted to do at the time, and and it started to grow and develop. And volunteering was a key component to that for me to get in one time in order to know I participated, and then to try to continue to do that. So yeah, the perspective shifts of like being incarcerated and also having to figure out how to navigate that as well. Um,
Right. And
yeah.
so it sounds like when you first entered the psychedelic space, you were really looking for personal growth and clarity and kind of direction. And as you found yourself working through that as a MAPS volunteer and then moving up, getting brought on, what did you find that you started to hope that it would offer others in that context?
Well, first, I had this hope that I would find community. That was a big piece for me because I was navigating being a felon and experimenting psychedelics and wanting to participate in something. Meanwhile, I think my environment wasn't really bringing that to me. It wasn't offering that, and it was isolating. So being able to volunteer and being able to get involved, I had this hope that I would be meet some like-minded people, that it would really open up doors, just to be exposed to people who are also in the space for one reason or another. Um, yeah, so uh, that was one of my big keys is searching for community. After that, I think just being exposed to whatever maps had in their direction, what they were doing. I trusted their vision. I was willing to lick envelopes or fold t-shirts or whatever it may be. And I know that that played a role, and that moment of feeling seen was was so valuable. I'm like, here I am with these years of trying to, recognize myself and feel like there's something there that wants to participate. And that was a really key moment.
Absolutely. And I can only imagine like the licking envelopes to where you are now is kind of got to be a little bit of a like, oh my God, holy, for lack of better words, holy shit, how did I get here from like licking
Yeah,
glue? But
yeah.
I mean, just hearing your story and the growth into community and like seeking out that community is what opened up all these doors, not just for you personally finding what was going to be healing for you, but then also finding, new friends, but then also career opportunities and then opportunities to travel and see the world. And I think when people talk about things like manifestation, right? Um, People might think of like vision boards, like our dearly in Florida, Dr. Katz is planning on doing a vision boarding here in the next few weeks. But I think when we talk about that kind of manifestation, it goes beyond what you even know you're asking for, right? Because I'm
Mhm.
sure you didn't walk into Santa Cruz Maps office like, I want a job, I want to be in the C-suite, I'm gonna travel the world, all of this. No, you walked in like, let me lick some envelopes, and then that manifested for you all of these things that actually became what you were looking for, but didn't even know you were really looking for.
Yeah. No, that I mean that's a really good point to bring back up. Like let's like I don't want to romanticize any of what that looked like in the past, because what you're seeing now and where I'm at is very different from where I was. I was still a very like tender and restricted person, and feeling like, that there was I was not I was just very different. And so I remember when I first heard of Maps and I found the address, and I said, this is the day I'm gonna drive over and introduce myself and say, hey, I would like to volunteer and be involved. And what that ended up looking like was me crying on their door, on their staircase, and being like consoled for about an hour and a half, like, and just being like really open and be like, I would really want to be a part of this. I have a felony and I don't have a degree, and what do I need to do? Like, I just, what, and luckily everybody's so such a harm reductionist that they sat with me, and it was beautiful because what it really brought to me was like that relational piece of saying like there was this key moment of Mareda, who was a person who was a front admin at the time, who is now the development manager here at Maps. And she goes, I don't have a degree. This person does. That person doesn't. This person does. There's one way we got involved, and a lot of us got in is through volunteering. So if you can find yourself doing that, then you will at least be able to like join us. And I trusted that for years, and trying to trust on top of trying to trust more and more and more on top of going through and being where I was at, emotionally and everything. It was it was a painstaking process and at the same time to be really transparent. And I don't ask that for people to go through that now when navigating psychedelics. I'm trying to recognize them where they're at early, and also not yeah, also like not put the pedestal onto maps where it's like this is the place that we need to land. Actually, let's start learning about what your interests are and how you want to navigate and how you want to contribute in all sorts of spaces, because the psychedelic space is going to it needs a lot of people. It needs people to be involved in things like this. Uh,
Mhm.
this builds and creates more and externalizes and spreads things out. So yeah.
Absolutely. And I know that, speaking on, and I appreciate your like openness about your experience with incarceration, especially being falsely incarcerated. I can imagine it's only like doubly intense emotionally for you. But how does that shape the way you move through psychedelic and healing spaces today? I assume the way you approached, for instance, like mushroom journeys back then is not how you approach them now, but there's probably key tenets that, you've carried on as a through line, right?
Yeah, yeah. The since the incarceration was such a jarring and unexpected moment that happened, that was something where like when your reality kind of gets shaken and the powers that be will remove you from where you're at, where you're planted, where you're trying to grow as a person, and having to restart, really question everything and really bring a lot of fear in. Um, Luckily, no, I don't want to say luckily, but it turned out to where uh, I didn't, and mind you, my charges and my incarceration was also with my brother. We were both falsely incarcerated, um, and so out of a 4 month or a 4 year possibility in going to prison, we had a 10-month sentence, and I spent 3.5 months in jail, about 4.5 months total with some of the red tape in there. Um, and so the like I mentioned earlier, like taking mushrooms at like an 18, 19-year old and seeing that these doses I would take, they were I was still trying to be I was out on bail at the time. I was still trying to be a 19-year-old. I was still trying to, enjoy time with my friends. And so I realized that they were kind of regulating my system after a small climb, a small peak. I would settle in like I kind of feel like myself, not this worried, super worried person. And I could use the language now, but this is definitely not how I felt about the time. I was regulating my nervous system. I was taking time every time I would disappear for 20, 30 minutes and be like, "Hey, I'm gonna go to my car real quick and just settle in, let myself settle and come back regulated." And after doing that so many times, I realized that I can feel this way despite feeling that trauma exists, despite feeling that anxiety and that fear. Um, and then I started posing questions to myself and like how, again, what's relaxing, what's soothing, how do you want to be in the future? What's happiness for you? And those are principles that have related to me throughout all the years now, where when I go into a space or a journey, uh, I'm familiarizing myself with my past and the past me and the current me, and we have a lot of conversations together. Parts work and therapy has been really valuable and kind of a staple without me necessarily having the language, except more and more as I've grown throughout the years. Therapy has helped me so much in understanding the parts work and accentuating that conversation with myself and inviting all of me into the room. And that way, the past me can see what's going on in today's world as well and still be very present in what's going on. And that makes it more exciting for every bit of me.
Right. And I think it's a good mention to mention like today's world is not the same world that I mean when I was 18, we're oh, in a few days that'll be 10 years ago. And then for you, I'm sure it's also 10 years ago. The world was a very different place a
Yeah.
decade ago. And so I think in the world now, we're facing a lot of like different kind of ideas about incarceration and it's intertwining like kind of some people look at incarceration and substance use as like, well, of course. And other people look at incarceration and psychedelic therapy as maybe we can use this as a rehabilitative factor. And I hear you might be launching something with maps if you wanted to talk about it, obviously. But I hear it's a survey, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is a fun one. So, um, just a little bit of context of this. Because I'm just reaching out or have volunteers reach out to me or people who are interested in volunteering reach out to me. We end up making contact at one point or another, and I genuinely want to like hear the curiosities of what people have in their minds and like what is something that we can that maybe we can develop. And so that happened between a volunteer and I. And we sat in the meeting just like this, one on one, and we were chatting and saying, "Well, I hear you want to be involved, and I want to help out with this too. What can we do?" And both being formerly incarcerated, we want to go in that direction. So one thing that came to mind is like, well, if we're both kind of sharing perspectives of what it's like to navigate psychedelics, being like an underlying tone as a formerly incarcerated person, how can we extend that further? Because voices, marginalized groups, can feel very isolated. And so shining a light on that is, I mean, it's so valuable. So we came up with this idea of launching a survey, and I had a great meeting about it today. It's still in development. We might even be expanding from the last time we talked, Alyssa. But the idea is that we're launching a brief survey to the public for people who are formerly incarcerated and who are navigating psychedelics, and to gain your perspectives on what it's like to do this, what it's like to navigate, and to be transparent, to see how the medicines have helped, or even challenges that you're facing. And what I would like to do is reshare those stories out to the public so people can further relate and know that we're not alone in navigating this. And so it's to really like add visibility. On top of that, I am also going to be asking people who are signing or filling out that survey if they'd like to be involved in future opportunities for volunteering, because if we can hyper focus on a really cool demographic of people who have who have a perspective that we can really like learn from. Um, Not to say I have all the ideas on what we're going to do in the future, but I want the people in the room so we can start building those ideas. And this has been great. It's been really exciting. I love that it's expanding even further. I was hoping for like a humble little survey, and then I work with a bunch of visionaries who are like, we can take this further. Like I'm here for it. Let's go
It's
further.
classic, very classic maps. Like a little seed of an idea becomes something like, I don't know, like psychedelic science.
Mhm.
Um, and I mean, that speaks so much to your role there too, is like you create these opportunities at which people can like really see this little sprout and they're like, oh, I want to water that. And I mean, that really leads me to like in your current role, you help to create events and spaces. Like, I mean, I you basically organized all, what, 800 volunteers for psychedelic science in 2025. And so you also had a big lift in creating spaces, not just at the conference, but then also for those volunteers to meet each other. And so, what values guide how you design those experiences? Does it obviously play off your background, but is there anything else that's kind of underlying those decisions?
Yeah, that's been the biggest way that I can be involved in these events is through the volunteer coordination of it. And we had about 400 volunteers for PS25, and
Felt like more.
It felt like that. It's a lot of people. It feels it's great. And there's this aspect of like you could recruit people to do some roles and maybe not look too much into them and then let them just be involved. But that's never been the case because I I intentionally take the time to make sure that we read the surveys. I have a we'll have this approach of reading people's surveys. I always ask people when they fill out the application form, the interest form, to share about yourself because I truly mean it when I say that your profiles are read, and I want to find something that feels in tune with what you're looking to do. So any role that you see at psychedelic science, they have been chosen for that role, and specifically to say the exposure that they may get with other people, the type of networking that they want, or just the kind of even calmness in the environment or enthusiasm in their environment where they can be very outward and extroverted. Like I look at people's skills and people's interests, and I do that because I won't forget what it's like to volunteer for the first time and to share that I have this desire to really be involved. And it's because of the listening aspect that takes place, like that I'm able to do this in the first place with other volunteers. I started off, not just helping run the map store. I was also going to events and did some tabling and started doing some coordination. They saw my experience with doing this kind of work and then letting me grow with it. Yeah, I really love to see that like there's this extra added care that goes into it because you psychedelic science somebody called it Learning Man, and I love it so much because it's just reminds me so much of like you're going to be there to have the experience that you need, not the one that you want. And um and that includes the people that you meet. And so if I could play any role in that in terms of the volunteer team that you're on or the people that you're going to meet as a volunteer, I've heard many stories of people coming back that they've met people who have changed their lives because of the role that they were in. And that's why I kind of keep those underlying principles. And it keeps it exciting for people that people can feel connected to what they're doing as best as possible. And uh, yeah, so it's great. It's a little extra work, but it's just like it's like the underlying principle of it all.
Right. And to think that like you've had a hand in like all 400 applications. I mean, and I take that inspiration from you here with Psychedelic STL. We also did our own volunteer survey and like we do look through those things too with that same kind of mindset. And when you've talked about volunteer coordination as kind of weaving of human talent
Mhm.
and time and lived experience, and you've talked about how that looks in practice, right? Which is people end up meeting folks that can become either their best friends or their new coworker, they start a business or they have a great time or they just discover something new about themselves. And I
Mhm.
think that, creating communities with that title or with that opportunity in mind really does give you this unique opportunity to position people to have kind of like those stars aligned meetings. And
Mhm.
not to say that we're playing any kind of like matchmaker when we do
Mhm.
volunteer coordination, but it is really like a matching in skills and in mind and in thought process that allows people to really meet kind of versions of themselves that they might not have otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. That really that brings up a story I have where I was speaking to Dr. Joe Tafur. We've seen each other on this circuit for a while in terms of his speaking engagements, and I love what he has to share. And he shared this perspective that, like, if you think about maps for the last 40 years, um, as Rick as an individual, and as he's from the day he started doing this, he's always been that kind of character to have the conversation with anybody, and he's always been that character to say, I might know somebody that you might need to meet. You know what I mean? Rick has never asked for somebody to have everything directed towards maps. It's never been, um, and Joe Defer said, well, when you do that over 40 years, think about the type of impact that he's been creating, like mycelially, doing the social network here, words, where he's connecting people over that duration of time. And I feel like my part of my position is doing that as well too. When I go to these conferences or I meet people in general, I want people to meet each other faster than what that search would be. If I weren't somehow involved, and it never has to direct towards maps. So that definitely correlates with the volunteer coordination. What is kind of the optimal. It takes more thought and care. Uh, but that's why we're here. We're here because we're not just trying to do this for ourselves, but we can do that for each other. And I think that's the beautiful part about it. Yeah.
Right. And I think that, creating that community in the space of titles and volunteering, like you try to bring the human element into it and create this community beyond institutions, right? Where it's not just for maps or for, whatever group you're volunteering for, but it's really with the desire to create something, beyond those. And so, um, along those lines, like a lot of your work actually does live outside of formal titles or institutions. Even just referencing back to psychedelic science, you're both found and found, you're both maps, but then you're also doing Rudy's things and having friends and hanging out. And so, what does community really mean to you beyond those roles and credentials and the kinds of, boxes we put ourselves in a career perspective?
I've been thinking about this a lot lately because I still live in, my town where and I still have my community of people who I care for locally and externally with my maps world and this beautiful privilege that I have to be able to do this and to meet people all around, meet you and these other people who are very like ambitious and wanting to navigate this as well and find each other, find the others is like a really big part of this. Um, I I think about eh, how like what are the ways I'm getting involved locally, and there's just I think it's just kind of learning the skills that I've learned through maps, being the international type of influence that it has or impact that outreach that we have. Um, Turning that locally is really interesting to me. Like, what can I do to get involved? And I start thinking about, even this makerspace that I'm a part of now. There's it's a beautiful space and people can get involved and start to learn how to use fabrication tools. And I'm thinking, well, what communities can benefit from this so much? And so there's a great organization here in Santa Cruz called Barrios Unidos, and I'm trying to build that invitation with them and see like how can we create gateways for people in that nonprofit to get involved and have better access to learning and getting creative again. It takes one key to for somebody to like find something that's like a new activation for them, something that feels calling for them. And I learned a lot by woodworking um and also, I really feel like the maps world and what I do, it's not necessarily, it's almost like it's always on, but it's almost always not because I spend time with friends. I spend time outside of these conferences and uh being informal, I guess, and just hearing and listening to what they want to accomplish and how can I get involved in that. And it's the same aspect of what I said earlier, just a little bit more care in terms of just like trying to figure out what I can do, like what can I actually inquire about ways to help. And it means a lot to people, and it means a lot to me when people do the same. And so, yeah, I've seen lots of little things grow because we, reach a little deeper just to see, how we can help. Um, I
Right.
think Psychedelic St. Louis is one of those things that like is like a really big. It's near and dear to my heart because I we talked about this. We talked about what it's like to create something like this and get involved. And yeah, this is a
Yeah. And I
this
do have to say for those of the psychedelic STL crew listening, Rudy was there when I told him I want to create a psychedelic society in St. Louis. And he was like, do it. And I was like, it's scary. And so
yeah.
it took me, I think it was 2 years into knowing each other where I finally told you I went and did the thing and you're like, yay. But that kind of community building is not, it's not a role or a company or a place that we put ourselves into. And I think that when you talk about creating these kinds of spaces, these kinds of communities, and hearing people out, making them feel seen, I think we're really talking about building spaces that feel genuinely safe and that you can cultivate trust, especially just not only amongst each other, but then trust that, like, your finding this community doesn't necessarily mean that that's the end of your community seeking or community finding. Like there will always be ways to branch out from that. Just like you never thought you would see yourself in this space, then all of a sudden you're in another space and you have that same kind of realization, like, wow, I didn't think I was gonna be in a group like this today. And I think that speaks to the safety that we cultivate. And I think that when people find themselves in community feeling safe for the first time, that gives them that trust in themselves to then go out into the world and say, I will feel safe again and continue to feel safe as I seek these out because I know that that first time it was scary, but then they develop trust from being in a group of people that enhance that for them. And I think it's an important question to ask of like, how do we create spaces that feel that way, like genuinely safe and trustworthy, especially for people who have been historically excluded or harmed by them. Even thinking of folks that may have had a bad experience with psychedelics or possibly even a bad experience with a retreat or a clinic or a provider, or even folks who have just had a bad experience with therapy, period, not even involving psychedelics. How can we kind of repair that harm as a community?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about the that growth zone that exists for people where we're able to be in an environment where we can trust what's going on, feel comfortable, and uh, let our boundaries down enough to receive and to let in new information, to learn something new from others, or even just what, what's, yeah, what there is to learn, these different aspects of uh, perspectives from other people. Uh, Creating environments, eh, I start with recognizing like what makes me feel safe, what's a good environment, what would feel comfortable, not just for me, and then remembering the people who I've met in the past. When people have done that for me, I think about like, well, what efforts have they done to help me learn that I can I can feel vulnerable in front of others. I can be curious in front of others. I've had so many barriers up in the past where it just didn't feel like an option. Um, and yeah, I want to be in an environment where I'm not gonna dissociate. So recalling that, using like that as an index, remember those moments of like, what did it take for me to like be present with that? What did it take for me to be able to learn here, to receive here? And also taking the perspectives of the other people around me. That's what we always start to look at these other people. There's other uh, groups of people who consider safety differently. They consider that, and so how can we create that? And and when it comes to, learning those things from other people, and you see other folks come in who are, say, first time trying a new environment, a psychedelic society meeting, or they're kind of feeling it out, and they're, just being in a place where you can be in a way open to learning from them, to listening, to seeing where they're at is an invitation in itself. Um, and I think that creating an invitation is key for people who are just um, trying to feel curious, trying to feel involved, and putting their effort out there and recognizing where they're at. Because some of us can be far more comfortable in some areas than others, and we can't always just assume that everybody's feeling that way as well. So taking a step back and seeing the individuals for who they are, and being curious about where they're at. Um,
Yeah. And so I'm hearing it's a learning exercise on both sides, really, to like delve within oneself and learn about what those before you that made you feel that way can teach you. But then also for folks that are coming in to, be open to that learning, which does have a prerequisite of, some form of like safety or feeling like they can enter that growth window, for lack of better words. And so I think that that really begs the question of like, what responsibilities do we hold to one another when we gather in healing or psychedelic adjacent spaces or even just in community?
Take removing psychedelics for a moment, it's the same rules apply in terms of like providing us a space of a container for vulnerability to exist. That's that takes multiple elements. What does it take? Again, reflect on ourselves, be present with ourselves, and say, what does it take for me to be vulnerable, and how can I extend that further? And holding that with a lot of integrity to being open to. new ideas and open to ways of expanding our point of view. Um, and then understanding that, psychedelics are going to be our uh, an amplifier of what people are experiencing or their environment and the emotional state that they're in. We're saying yes to something uh, that is very vulnerable and with lots of room for beautiful growth and trust and all the things too. But really, we have to consider the risks involved too of sensitive spaces being, where harm can exist, and can be created. So being mindful and present throughout the entire process of it, and not letting like any assumptions saying that, well, now it's time to relax and now it's time to loosen the structure on things. Um, it's really saying that this is holding something really uh, like preciously throughout the entire duration of people being in that presence. Um, because the vulnerable times can happen at any moment for somebody.
Right. And I think that does, and you said it perfectly, like taking psychedelics out of the equation there. I think that that's the case really in like a lot of these spaces where people are being vulnerable. Even, in Missouri, yes, we do have medical cannabis, and yes, we do have recreational cannabis, but those are new inventions for us, for lack of better words. And so I think that, not everyone here is willing to really discuss their what they would call like drug use in
Hmm.
spaces like Psychedelic STL, or in spaces like, say, if WashU's CHIRP program is hosting a gala, it can be really threatening to actually talk about substance use, especially Schedule One substances, in an environment where, 5 years ago, you might have been ostracized at best, or at worst, like actually patted down outside by the police. And so
Right.
I think that responsibility to really hold that container very preciously also does extend to places in which we have these conversations, and not just in, a trip setting, but also in a discussions about the trip setting. And I think you put that really well. And
Thanks.
I
Yeah.
do want to move into talking a bit about like the micro level, because we've talked a lot about how we can create and cultivate these spaces for each other and for ourselves in both large conference size venues, but then also in smaller, even friend groups. But I think that there's something to be said, and I think they're not to call them prerequisites, but I think there's things that need to be had in one's toolkit to be able to do these things, to hold this space, to really take care enough to allow others around you to feel vulnerable. And so I'm wondering, how do you find yourself cultivating these things and kind of almost meditatively bringing them to your conscious awareness on a regular basis?
Reflecting on the times where I've had impactful social gatherings, like in meetings with friends, uh, I try to be present with like what is taking place. Why am I comfortable? Why, like, first recognizing that if I find myself in a place comfortable with another person, what's going on? Is it the lighting? Is it the music? Is it these type of things? I think that, I really do consider all these different forms of medicine. And so I kind of think of it that way. If we're going to start presenting things, I start looking at like what's helped me in the past and how can I kind of create an offering, and so what that ends up looking like is thinking about, well, I'm going to be around people who I want to share space with and I do want to learn from, or just like kind of optimally enjoy everything. So what do I need to do to let the boundaries down in a good, comfortable way? And same thing applies is set and setting, right? So create an environment where things are calm, lighting is calm. We are people are able to feel comfortable in that. Music is always good for soothing. It's always good for relations. Thinking about these other tools that have helped me in the past. So if you think about the things that maybe helped you in the past, one is like things like aromas. I have this like little like I was once shared an aroma of this peppermint lavender oil, and it changed everything for me because in that moment I smelled that and it brought me calmness. It brought me to a place where I was able to relax. And it's not just like looking at it just like I just relaxed. Like, oh no, this like settled my nervous system. This put me back into a place where I was enjoying my environment. So I started carrying that with me. I started making that myself. carrying that with me, and now it's one of the medicines I bring in offering to people. Even when I go to another space, I'll bring that. So I think we all kind of can have these little things that can be cool little tools, uh, and talk with people, see how that feels with them, see if you want to share something that's worked for you in the past. Next thing you know, you might be gaining a lot more tools and medicines that can help an environment where people can start flourishing. I think it's a matter of those types of things, and also just like a lot of consideration. I think about, just the people who are next to me, say like, if I'm going to take care of myself for something by getting up to getting a water, I'm going to offer the next person next to me, and see if they want one as well too, just so I can show them care, show them convenience, and show them those types of things. That just feels like I want to extend this further beyond me and my experience. If you're feeling capable, if you're feeling that that's available for you, but it's a good practice because next thing you know, you're consistently taking care of the person next to you, or enjoying and helping, like showing them that you're enjoying them and they're enjoying you. Um, and that reverberates. And next thing you know, I think the spaces are all kind of finding good ways of contributing.
And I think when you talk about, set and setting, and you talk about aromas, you talk about, music, you talk about, different lighting and stimuli, I think what we're really getting at is like the artfulness of the moment and the artfulness that we can bring to a moment. And so it seems like you almost engage with art not just as expression, but also as care. And so, what role does creativity and that artisticness play in your personal well-being?
I've realized for myself that there's this kind of cycle that I follow of things that feel very nourishing for me. And the vision at a young age was trying to figure out how can I create something for myself, where if I follow this cycle that kind of continues to feed and nourish, uh, that would feel like a very fulfilling life. Um, and so what that means to me is kind of these pillars of saying I want to be a part of something that contributes to others, and that's my maps work, and that's and then they're saying pieces I want to enjoy nature, and then they're saying I want to work with my hands and build things that I care about. Um, and there's these aspects of like and share spaces with friends, right? So these kinds of things like become a cycle where I start learning about like, well, when I take care of myself and get myself in nature, that's showing up for me. I could show up more regulated and be more caring and empathetic with my friends and the people around me. Um, when I go out in nature, I can feel the that calmness and that acceptance. Um, the redwoods are just really powerful listeners, and they're very much absorbent of like anything I'm willing to like let go of, and I've always recognized that, and so I can feel that relief, and that actually created this curiosity for me when I was able to like let go. I was able to be present with where I'm at and more curious about the nature around me, and I was able to find pieces of wood on the floor and take them home with me and start to build things out of it, out of this kind of challenging my own skills of being able to of use tools and make jewelry out of it. And I think that that's where the the jewelry has been a kind of it's an homage to like the power of like of what nature has done for me, and yeah, and I get to bring that forward into the creativity of what I'm doing in terms of uh yeah, connecting with people, and also like I find solace in meditation and in flow states, in like sanding and cutting wood and getting into like critical states of focus. Like these things are nourishing different parts of me, and so I don't feel like so many things, like there are many things that are missing in my life because I find an avenue that feels very connected for a part of me. So I need hyper focus, I need flow state, I need release, I need um, all these different pieces of me in order to show up for others, and that's uh, another big nourishing part of me. So it's a cycle. It's a cycle. That's why I named it Found and Founded. I want it to be cyclical, and so
Yeah.
yeah.
You put it really beautifully, like this art as care for oneself and being able to nurture those things that you need, whether it's self-expression or flow states or like that methodical progress that then leads to an end result that you can admire and then not only admire it, but share it with other people. I think it really speaks to the kind of gathering that we do within ourselves to find those resources to then give to our communities that we find ourselves in. And it reminds me of when people talk about, spoons theory, where they're like, oh, I don't have the spoons for that right now. Or, yes, I do have the spoons for that right now. And I think that this art as care uh, is kind of lost in like the self-care narrative that we have nowadays. I think that people talk often about meditation or yoga or physical movement, which is important. I agree. But I
Mhm,
also think that the artistic expression that can then be rejuvenating within ourselves and not necessarily for profit, but really just for the joy of doing it,
mhm,
is something that is beautiful and does teach us how to then cultivate artistic moments for other people. I think
mhm,
that, you creating jewelry, which is meant to be admired for other folks, then you can kind of take that not directly into community building, but like, I know what lighting is going to be aesthetic in this moment because I know what kind of wood is going to be aesthetic on a necklace. It doesn't seem too far off from one another. And so I think that creation does fuel creating in larger spaces. And you did bring up kind of reconnecting to the land a bit. And I love that because I do think that art really can connect us not just to ourselves or to other people, but to the land that we find ourselves on. And I would love for you to talk a little bit more about that experience for you and how kind of engaging with nature and communing with nature, um, and the intent to bring out that beauty in everything that we're experiencing and that nature is in and of itself can really bring us back to the land that we live with.
in my starting journey and like going into the forest more, like as I had more autonomy in my teenage years and going on hikes, it's something that you do, right? It's something you do is go out and hikes and maybe even with friends and everything too. And the appreciation wasn't quite there early on, but after going so many times, I realized that like the beauty isn't just in stopping to recognize how lush everything is or how like separated I am from the stressors. Um, but it's recognizing that I can appreciate them because it's giving me the opportunity to let go of those things, to let go of the stressors, to let go of and get my clarity in order to appreciate. So the beauty is really environmental and internal because of that. I just want to start to be able to, I was able to realize that. Um, I wanted to recreate that. In fact, I kind of came up with this practice now that really helps me. And um, it's been helping for a very long time, but the way that I hike now, after all these years of doing this, the way that I hike is like I go into any hike recognizing that I'm carrying all of my thoughts, all these pieces, everything comes with me as soon as I start that walk. And I will hike until every single thing starts to clear and until I'm down to a singular thought. The one thing that I've been thinking about the most the entire time, the one thing that sticks with me. And when I recognize that, I mark that as my actual focus for the day, the thing that's my underlying tone for the day. And if I take that moment and then I realize that's my stopping point, I'll turn around and I'll integrate that thought on the way back from the hike. And that is my way of like physically giving it that care, that attention to whatever it is, because there's something out there that I'm stressing about or something there that I'm carrying. Um, and yeah, it's kind of giving that intention. So again, like that beauty of nature providing that environment for me. And then the beauty of me letting, like, being able to feel that and hold that and recognize that. I love clarity, you know. We don't get to carry it all the time. So, yeah, yeah, and so that's really what goes into a lot of what I, again, I'm gonna hold that clarity and hold that piece that I have and try to take that on to the next thing I'm doing, which is what I'm going to build or how I'm going to show up to the next gathering or the friend I'm going to hold space for. You know, those are all like big aspects of it. Yeah.
Right. And so it sounds like, I mean, in the theme of the talk or the fireside, if you will, like creating doesn't just happen in one single space. And I think that whatever we create for ourselves, for others, even in our jobs or in our friendships, does have this ripple effect throughout the rest of our lives where we can take from it and also give to it. And it's not just isolated to certain scenarios or people or titles or companies. It's actually all very interwoven. And I think that the collectivity of creation and care is really important, especially in the psychedelic space. You know, coming home from a 9 to 5, coming to a psychedelic STL event, like we are all holding that space together with everything we've carried throughout our day. And I think that's where creating spaces with each other becomes importantly intentional and importantly like with care as we show up to know what we're bringing and what we're taking with us as we leave. And I think that you speak to that really beautifully. And we're getting to 7 o'clock, and so I want to give time for Q&A. And so I want to ask, in closing, before we get to our Q&A portion. So as you look ahead right now, in all of the atmospheres that you're creating and all of the things you're creating, all the relationships you're creating, what feels most alive or emergent in your work right now?
So yeah, I think that I mean, given that where I was at, 18, 19 years old, I had to recognize like where I'm at the time, um, and understand like the kind of resources I did or didn't have. I had access to mushrooms, but I didn't have access to very much like, say, structure or mental health support or, community, any of that stuff. I was just kind of navigating this and winging it. Um, but I really I was doing my best to listen to the concerns that I had, right? Because the fear that's coming up for me were things that are very important to me, that were very important to me at the time. Um, I'm navigating. I mean, let me bring all the variables or a lot of the variables into play here. Um, I'm a 19-year-old felon who's a Latino and I am trying to figure out how to grow and be somebody to grow to can try to be somebody with the dreams that I had once or that I had before going to jail. Trying to see how I want to step into being an adult um and what does professional mean? Like I was really concerned about those things. And I had felt a lot of pressure at the time and very set back. Every day I felt pressures and shames and all sorts of things that were just, I think that would make me like make me paralyzed a whole lot more without doing something like, doing mushrooms and taking psychedelics. Because those medicines would help leverage that piece of like perspective for me to see where I'm coming from and to think a little more creatively and and to hear that voice says like this is what my fears are. What do you want to do? What can you do now? What are the bigger steps that I want to take in the future? And see myself in 10 years? And also what can I do to kind of work backwards from there or take the next step? And that to me was like, well, I'm gonna have to like get outside a little bit more, or I'm gonna have to go on more walks in order to feel a little more regulated. I'm gonna have to try for a job, applying for 50 jobs and getting one call for an application. And that was such a horrible experience, and that lasted for years. Volunteering at MAPS is what gave me one piece of acceptance that felt great, and also, they ended up hiring me even though I'm a felon, and like that was obviously incredible, but that was learning over and over and over to do the things that like take baby steps to really say like be patient with myself. That was so key. Um, because it definitely doesn't help to go through a super difficult challenge in life and be the negative aspect of addition to it. Our own voice, our own pressures, our own like external pieces that are weighing on us. I had to learn to kind of try to be that more gentle version of me and patient with me along the way. Yeah, thank you for asking that. That's a really really good question. Um,
Absolutely. I knew Olivia would sneak in with the fantastic one.
yeah,
Thank you, Elizabeth. And I do want to like pointedly like kind of re-ask, like, was there a specific trip that you had where it kind of like clicked, or was it a compilation of them?
I can't remember a specific journey. What I was doing was enough. medium-sized doses, like to regulate and to give myself that space. And I remember a few like larger ones. But what it came down to was as I was continuing to do this and process letting go, again, what I was trying to do is be okay with going to prison for 4 years. Um, so that was my question. What do I need to do to be okay with this? And then psychedelics were helping me to understand that question more. So what I ultimately came up with was the other question was what I need to do to be happy after a prison sentence. And so I came up with three key components. One is to learn as much as I possibly could while incarcerated. The other one was I need to help people for the rest of my life, and I want to be a part of something that's much bigger than myself. And I, as a 19-year-old kid, like decided like that. Those were the three things I needed to be happy in my life. For if no matter how I need to like what I need to do to start over. Um, and I did all those things. I did all those things, and it feel yeah. And so I just think like it took a lot to be able to face myself. And truth be told, like some of these larger journeys, they were there. I have to face a really big part of myself, a really scary part of myself in order to come to this acceptance. But that that level of surrender, I mean, talk about surrender when you're surrendering your freedom to, to a system that doesn't allow you to have a choice. It gave me a lot more autonomy and perspective to say like, well, if I'm letting go early, if I'm letting go now and letting this and learning acceptance before you take me in, this was like it was really freeing already. Um, so I had that perspective going into jail rather than, fighting it along the way.
That's really powerful. And I also have to speak to just like at 19, at 18, 19, it's amazing to have, brought yourself to those places. And I mean, knowing you as a person, I know that like your head was there, but it wasn't developed there, you know. But I think that like that lesson is not just because you are who you are or because mushrooms are the way that they are. I think that that can be brought out in people when faced with that adversity. I think it just takes, the right combination of life and things to bring out that desire to find that within ourselves. And so I really appreciate the vulnerability about it. I know that that's not a fun memory to recollect, but I really appreciate your perspective. And thank you again, Olivia, for an awesome question. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah,
I love that question. And thanks for the follow-up to that too, Alyssa. Yeah,
yeah.
this is the kind of the depth and the detail I'm happy to go into. So sometimes I just forget to zoom in a little bit more, right? So I'm pleased. This is I think everything has a really deep purpose and meaning if we can address like see like we all have so much depth to us and why we make the decisions that we do. So I love recognizing detailed thoughts in other people too and what they do. So this is fun. This is so fun for me.
Rudy, you can come and talk to us whenever you want. You know
I'm here
that.
for it.
Any other questions, curiosities, deep soul diving questions?
Hello, I wanted to ask a question.
Hi there, Gina. How are you?
Good. First, Alyssa, your moderating is on point.
Oh,
It feels
thanks,
funny.
ma'am.
Rudy's a great friend. It feels funny to ask a question, but uh, Rudy, you have like such a unique position within maps, and I'm sure you've done a lot of things that you probably never would have imagined. And I know that you get to travel to some really interesting places. So I was curious, in like all of your maps travels, has there been an experience or an event that is particularly meaningful to you?
The times that I've taken in order to meet the friends that I have now. I think that these are all markers pretty much around events. And so these number of events that I've gone to where I got to meet Alyssa or I got to meet you and I got to meet a lot of other people. Um, those are all really incredible markers. What really gets me excited and these really key parts, highlights for me is on the moments where we all can get together and share the practice that we've been talking about this entire time. We will cater an experience together in terms of just like a good environment where we recognize the travel and efforts that we put inside, the journeys and the risks involved, all just to be here, because we truly want that. But yeah, the accumulation of like the community that's been built, and gosh, sometimes there's just been those moments where we get to all be together. New York was one of them, and
I was like,
yeah,
this is New York. This is
yeah, giving New York, yeah, it's good. Um, yeah, it's just like let's just really enjoy that time together because it takes a lot to do this and um yeah, that really like yeah, that was a really good question because I cherish all of you in that space and um yeah, yeah, it's just it's beautiful to see like where we're coming from and where we continue to like where we want to be involved with each other further. Um, and I think it's moments like these too that like I want to see it continue to expand with everybody. Yeah.
it's great. It's heartwarming. I really and thank you so much, Gina, for joining. You're a highly requested psychedelic STL gem, by the way. I'll have you know. So
Oh,
you might find yourself in Rudy's seat soon.
yeah, we can Rudy, we can do this together next time.
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
Um,
bring on the caps folks and all of it. Yeah.
Yes.
Do a little sister psychedelic society, mutual grilling of Rudy Maldonado. Or we could do a roast. I think that'd be fun too.
I can make a a good environment and I can also take a joke. I know that.
That's
I,
what we call creating a community, Rudy.
yeah, the title that I didn't get this year that I wish I would have gotten as a chief vibe officer, but that just didn't happen. It's okay.
That's okay. You're the chief
Maybe one
vibe
day.
officer in our hearts, Rudy. You're the chief
Yeah.
vibe officer in our hearts. Any last final questions that anyone would like to ask?
If you ever find yourself in, say, a creative rut or something, would you say one of those, I don't know if it was three categories of nature, helping people, and regulating the nervous system, would you say it's because like something's out of balance?
Yep.
Yes? Okay.
That's exactly it. And sometimes it's hard to pinpoint.
Hmm.
Recognizing, say, the pillars that are for you, right? Or let's just
Hmm.
bring it back to me. The pillars that are for me. If those pillars are somehow off balance, I may not know right away, but recognizing what they are, that they exist, that they're important to me, and like it makes it easier to come back to when I forget sometimes, right? Like something's off center. I'm not feeling myself. Well, what are my pillars, Rudy? Like think about what those things are. How am I being nourished in these ways? Am I doing enough self-care, And yeah, just recognizing it. And sometimes it's like, yeah, 2 out of 3 are feeling great. The last one, and I do this. I do this constantly. Let's like because I'm juggling plenty and I'd love to keep myself busy. Um and yeah, I mean this is why I have like Alyssa will see me in a rut consistently. She's like, well, you need to do this stuff. And when your friends know about this with you and your community can call this out too, like with care and compassion, like what a beautiful net that is like been created. Um but yeah, yeah, just like holding ourselves accountable to that too, and be like, I need to go out in nature. So that's going to be the medicine. That's the medicine I need right now. And so and then just go from there. And slowing things down and taking that break is actually the way to move forward. That's a way to get back into it. And can't forget that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely
Sounds
agree.
like you're a
Agree.
creative. I'm curious too. Yeah, but
Yeah, Mason, go for it.
Yes, I am creative. I like drawing, doodling, and then at work, I am able to create pretty much with free reign, like a specific look in a product. So when I get into those like flow states at work, it's like time just ceases to exist, and it's pretty cool.
I love that. I love that. Well, cool. I'm glad we can relate on this too, and thank you for asking those questions. Yeah, that's really cool.
Mhm.
Awesome. And I just want to thank everyone that is here tonight for taking the time out of your day to welcome Rudy into our virtual space and Rudy for creating some more virtual space with us. It's always a pleasure having you here. And for the folks that are at home, um, Thank you so much for joining. We'll see you at our next event. But Rudy, please think of us as you go on to create your next best thing in your maker space. And everybody have a great rest of your Thursday evening. It's been Psychedelic STL Virtual Speaker Series.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you
Guys.
all so much.
Of course. Thanks,
Thank you.
everybody.